February 7th meeting to order. Under items of the chairman, I am sad to report that our fellow trustee, Chris Kaufman, who was a trustee for 37 and some odd years, passed away Tuesday night. He served with 4 mayors and 5 transit directors. Had a great impact. He was the chairman of the trust for about 25 years. You could verify that, but he left a long impact in both the parking area and the transit area. His services are tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock at Smith & Kernke Funeral Home on North May. But we want to express our deepest sympathies to his family at this time for their loss. So, moving on, item 3 is residents to be heard. There are none. Then item 4 is approval of the minutes from the January 22nd special meeting of our COPTA board. Is there a motion to approve? It's been moved and seconded. Please vote electronically. That one. Yeah, that. Okay, motion passes. Okay, item 5 is the consent docket. There are 2 items on the consent docket. Are there either one of those that any of the trustees would like to pull and consider individually? If not, is there a motion to approve our consent docket? It's been moved and seconded. Please vote electronically. Motion passes. Items for individual consideration, there are 3. The first one is to approve the request for proposal for labor legal services and authorize the administrator to advertise.
Yeah, appreciate it. Good morning. This item is to authorize the administrator to advertise a request for proposal for legal services pertaining to specifically employee issues. So just briefly, this really focuses on hiring, negotiations, legal consultations, but we typically lean a lot on these legal firms to help us during contract negotiations, and that's coming up later this year. So I'm looking forward to getting this request for proposals out. Estimated annual cost is $80,000.
Okay, are there any comments or questions about this item? If not, is there a motion to approve? It's been moved and seconded. Please vote electronically. Motion passes. Item B is to approve the request for proposal for pension legal services for legal services relating to matters including but not limited to the defined benefit plan matters for the Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority pension plan and authorize the administrator to advertise.
So similar to the previous one, this is a request for proposals, but this one is specifically for legal services pertaining to our pension plan. And this is an estimated annual cost of $13,000.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? Okay, if not, is there a motion to approve? It's been moved and seconded. Please vote electronically. Motion passes. Item C is to authorize and direct the municipal counselor to prepare and file any and all necessary paperwork to effectuate settlement in the amount of $22,000 on behalf of the Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority without admitting liability in a claim of John Waller V, and/or to enter into executive session on advice of the municipal counselor to receive confidential communications from its attorneys concerning the above claim as authorized by statute. Because disclosure would seriously impair the ability of the public body to deal with the pending claims in the public interest.
Yeah, so we have worked with our legal team and negotiated what we feel to be a fair and balanced settlement.
Okay, unless any of the trustees would like to enter into executive session to discuss this, is there a motion to go ahead and approve the item? It's been moved and seconded. Please vote electronically. Motion passes. Moving on to item 7 is our ratification of claims and payroll for a period from January 1st through January 31st, 2025. Is there a motion to ratify? It's been moved and seconded. Please vote electronically. Motion passes. I'll note that it's 6 minutes after 9 and we're to item 8. We're breezing through this. Thank you all very much. So item 8 is to receive our financial reports. And Suzanne, are you going to give us the budget to actual review for the month ending December 31st?
Yes, well, good morning, and don't worry, my presentation will make up for the time that we gained. So I've got about an hour's worth of data for you. So just kidding, I really don't. I'll keep it as brief as I normally do, but of course, always happy to answer questions. So I have a presentation, if we could get that pulled up. Thank you so much. All right, so we'll just dive in, as we always do, with transportation operations, which is page 2 in your packet. So the overall summary here is that expenditures exceed revenues by $394,791. Our year-to-date revenues exceed our budget by 2%. They're at $22.5 million, and our year-to-date expenditures are $22.9 million, which are right on budget. So we'll just dive into a few lines here I'd like to summarize for you on our revenues. So the fair media sales that you'll see here on the top row, I wanted to highlight this one for you because we have some growth from prior year. Looking at this, the contribution to our actual versus budget variance, which is 12% ahead of budget, is due to a couple of things. So I didn't mention earlier, but this is looking at data from July 1 through December 31, so 6 months of our fiscal year. So every year, the board approves an item for us to have a half-price sale. And so one of those sales happens in July and one happens in December. And so the information that you're seeing here includes revenue from 2 of our sales this year. And so that's really our biggest contributing factor into our fair media sales being ahead of budget. We've actually seen a lot of growth in the number of passes that we're selling during that half-price sale. So I've got a couple of data points for you. So in FY24, we sold 247,000 worth of passes. In this current fiscal year, FY25, we sold 426,000. And so that's $180,000 of growth, or 72%. So we're definitely seeing a pickup in our sales. And I'd like to just give a nod to Armando and his team doing a really great job marketing this pass sale. And not to mention, I think probably most important of all is that we're more actively reaching out to our community partners, our nonprofits, to make sure they know about this sale so they can spread their dollars as far as possible. So that's also been a real growth area, is our bulk passes to our nonprofits and community partners. We also have seen an uptick in our token transit app. We've seen about 20% growth in people using the app. So all of this is kind of balancing out with the row above, that Farebox revenue line. So you'll see that's under budget from where we thought we'd be. But really, we're just seeing kind of more of that shift over to purchasing passes at the transit center, purchasing passes in our token transit app. So we're just seeing a shift in the way people are buying their fare. But overall, if you put these numbers together, we're 3% behind where we thought we'd be budget-wise, but we are 41% ahead of prior year in the fair media sales, and overall 22% ahead of where we were last year. So we're doing pretty good in our fares overall with where we thought we'd be at this point in time. Miscellaneous revenue, I just want to kind of every once in a while remind you why we have such a large variance here, 1,000%. It's very unusual for us to have a percent variance that high. So I just wanted to remind you, there's a footnote here explaining it, but pointing it out that this is, the variance is caused by a energy cap. So a transfer that the budget office says, normally that's in our base budget, the energy cap is, but it was inadvertently not included in our FY25 budget. And so the budget office made up for that by doing a transfer of a little over $600,000, which bumped our revenues up, therefore looking like an overperformance in that revenue line.
So are we going to have to do a budget amendment later in the year to have the budget authority on the bottom side to pay that?
Not at this time. We will be moving some of that over to the streetcar as well, because that energy cap was for all of our op units.
Okay.
So that's actually leading to another point I was going to make in our street. When we get to streetcar, I wanted to kind of lay the groundwork here. So the 600,000 covers other modes as well, not just transit. So we'll be working on making that transfer to balance this revenue out. So it'll actually be dropping some in the coming months once that's corrected. And then finally, the other agencies' participation that I have highlighted here, I actually brought this to your attention last month, but I wanted to bring it up again just to connect it to an item that you all just approved with Rose State. So the other agencies' participation includes our agreement with Midwest City and Rose State, as well as several of the different mobility programs. So you'll see we have a variance of $122,000. Really, now that you've approved that item with Rose State, we've got a $25,000 invoice we're going to be sending out. So that'll help catch up with some of that revenue variance. And then secondly, we have some programs I mentioned last month, mobility programs, where the revenues are based on reimbursement of expenses. And so now that we've got some expenses that we'll be submitting an invoice for, we expect the revenues to come in. So we're just trailing behind from a timing perspective so far on our other agencies' participation. We will see probably in the February report, which will be 2 months from now, you'll be seeing that revenue hitting. So we'll turn our attention over to the expense side of this picture. So again, just last month, I wanted to highlight, like I did last month with the personnel services. So in looking back at our prior B&As, our prior reports, we, for the first time last month, went into that negative variance zone on our personnel services. And so with that, I just want to continue to keep this in front of the trustees to make sure you know what we're doing to monitor it, and really just also keeping it on our radar if we do have a challenge that we need to tackle. So with this, last month, I mentioned to you that our costs exceed our budget by 4% year to date. And so I wanted to put this into some perspective. So we're 6 months into the fiscal year, and what we have budgeted at this point in the fiscal year would be 50% of our budget we would have expended. So nothing really hard to track with that. It's 50% of the budget, 50% of the fiscal year, because our personnel costs are just your salaries, your insurance, and that kind of thing. So overall, it pretty much levels out. Our actuals are 52%. So we're 2% over where we thought we'd be from the standpoint of how much of our budget did we think we were going to use by this point in time. 2% is not a real large percent, but I do want to point out from the dollar side of things, it is definitely a significant amount of dollars. So we see there's a negative variance of $622,000. So what I wanted to also point out to you, again, just looking at the full picture, is that we do have some savings in other line items. So like if you go down there to supplies, you'll see we have a positive variance of $137,000. And we're seeing some savings in our supplies, really in every account line. In particular, I wanted to point out our repairs and maintenance line. So this last year, we talked a lot about having some challenges with repairs and maintenance, just the cost, supply chain, shipping costs, and needing to buy extra because we didn't know if we could get it, and we wouldn't have a part we needed to have to repair a bus or maintain it. So I'm happy to report our maintenance and fleet manager, Dennis, and his team have done a really great job just going above and beyond, getting quotes. So basically all the parts that they're going to buy, though we have a contract and we can just buy them, they're actually taking that extra step to get multiple quotes to buy the cheapest from those that we have, vendors we have under contract. And that's helping us save some money. We've also I'm told we're caught up on our preventative maintenance, which really helps with the repairs. We have fewer repairs if you're doing your preventative maintenance, and then also keeping those repairs in-house. So those things are adding up to some savings in repairs and maintenance, which, as you can see, really has a big impact on our supply line item. So if we go to the bottom line here, the total expenditures, I mentioned that we have the overrun in our personnel costs, but if we look at it from the whole picture, we are only 0.3% over budget in our expenses. So our variance overall, we thought we'd be at 22.9 million. We're at 22.9, but we've got some $60,000 overrun on our expenses. So I just wanted to walk you through that to try and give a big picture view of where we're at. So my anticipation is just to continue reporting to you all about our personnel costs to make sure that we keep our eye on that ball. There's not a lot of knobs we can turn when it comes to personnel costs. It takes what it takes to provide the service. We do really keep a very close eye on our overtime because that is one of the areas that we do have to balance. When we have employees on leave, that kind of thing, we have to cover the work. And so those are things we really try to monitor as closely as possible.
So with next year's budget, I mean, I'm guessing we would just sort of factor, because you're saying, if I'm hearing you right, like it is what it is, the costs are what they are. So are we just sort of anticipating heading into next year, budgeting in preparation to meet what looks like, at least $500,000, right? Yeah, I don't know.
Yes, I can speak to that question. So in our base budget development, we work with the budget office, and they put in things like cost of living adjustments and merit increases and those kinds of things. So they develop our personnel costs as a base budget, factoring in those things. Where we'll have some misses though is that our current base is not quite at that level that it needs to be at. So we are working on getting that gap addressed in our budget submittal. That's a request that we've put in, and we'll see if it gets approved and is funded, but it is something we're looking at future focus for FY26 to ensure we get started off on the right foot in that fiscal year.
And that's general fund, like the city's general fund.
Yeah, that's
Yes, but I will warn you that that we asked departments to cut their budgets 4.5% for FY26 because revenues have slowed down. Between sales and use tax, we're $7 to $8 million under budget for this year, the general fund. So we have asked, and COPPA would be one that we had asked also to cut their budget by 4.5%.
So, I mean, maybe this is the magic behind the scenes, but like, if I'm just the words I heard, these are the costs to provide the services. Is that what I heard you say?
from the personnel costs.
Right.
I mean, this budget is based on a fully filled, all the positions filled, which we're currently staffed up.
So I hear what you're saying, Director. I guess my concern would be, I guess there's kind of two concerns. One, we kind of missed, for whatever reasons, what those costs were going to be this go round. My worry is that heading into next year, a reduction of services, and that's no bueno for me. So I don't know how we're going to square that circle, but I'd like to better understand that over the next few months. And I guess we have a budget workshop City Council does with the departments. So, I mean, I think this is maybe worth bringing up there, because I just don't think the reduction of services is, something anybody would want to see. I don't really have much more to say than that. Just setting the stage, I guess. Thanks, and thanks for the clarification.
Okay, well, if there's not any other questions on this particular slide, I can move over to parking. So our parking operations, that's page 4 of your report. So our revenues exceed expenditures by $1.7 million. And overall, our year-to-date revenues are $3.6 million, and they exceed our budget by 16%. And our year-to-date expenditures are $1.9 million, and those are under budget by 11%. So looking at our revenues, I'd point out to you our monthly contracts line, which is the first row there. We have a positive variance of $140,000, or about 10%. And in some prior months, I've reported that we're a little bit under from where we thought we'd be with our budget. And I mentioned that it was some timing issues with collecting some of the revenues for our contract parkers. And now we're ahead of budget, which means that we have gotten caught up on our collections of revenue. But we also did take a pretty conservative approach with our monthly contractor budget. When we were putting this budget together this time last year, we were also in a year of cuts. A large part of our monthly contractors is actually the city of Oklahoma City and their employees parking in our garages. And so some of our budget reduction, in terms of how we thought monthly contracts revenue would flow, we did bump that down a little bit to anticipate if there were less parkers, but in fact, we've not seen that happen. So we are overperforming in our budget just from the standpoint of the conservative budget that we developed. So we are ahead of budget by 10%, and right now we're looking like we'll maintain either being on budget or a little ahead. And then in events and transient parking, the last couple of months I have mentioned a variance to you, and I've also talked about prior year and comparing where we were at prior year. So in December, we received that very large payment that I had mentioned to you from one of our major customers of about almost $700,000, which bumped our revenues up to be at the level we had anticipated in our budget. And then if you look at prior year, we're just on level with where we were at this time last year with our event parking. If we look at the expense side, I was just going to highlight overall, we have a lot of savings in just about every row here, so I just thought I'd hit the highlight for you to look at where we thought we'd be 6 months into this fiscal year with our parking expenses was $2.2 million, and our expenses have just been pretty slow, and so we're at 1.9 million actuals for an overall variance of 12% on our parking expenditures. Well, 11.2%. All right, so I'm just going to give you the highlight on river cruises. Overall, our revenues are exceeding our expenditures by $88,000. Year-to-date revenues are $517,000, and they exceed budget by 4%. And our year-to-date expenditures on river is $429,000, and those are under budget by 5%. Over on streetcar operations, page 7, our revenues exceed our expenditures by $81,000. Our year-to-date revenues are $3.5 million, and those are right on budget. And our year-to-date expenditures are $3.5 million, and those also are right on budget. So just to point out to you over on the revenue side, just kind of as a reminder, our advertising revenue shows a variance of negative $12,500. That is just a timing issue with receiving the payment from our vendor that does the advertising for us on streetcars. So we do anticipate collecting that revenue and keeping caught up with this overall $150,000 of revenue. And on the expenditure side, I wanted to point out to you the negative variance of $161,000 under services and fees. So that's a 27% over budget. I mentioned earlier in my presentation about the energy cap, and so 2 things are contributing to this being over budget. Number 1 is the energy cap, so there was no budget put in our base budget there for streetcar. That's been corrected, and that will be transferred over, which will level that out quite a bit. And then also the insurance for that Herzog, our operator, has a pass-through cost for that, and the insurance cost is just a little higher than what we had budgeted. So those are the 2 largest contributing factors to our negative variance. Once the energy cap dollars are put in the right spot, we are looking good on our overall expenditures for streetcar. So that is my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Are there any questions or comments? Thank you, Suzanne.
Right, thank you.
Very thorough. Is there a motion to receive our financial reports? It's been moved and seconded. Please vote electronically. Motion passes. Item 9 is receiving our program reports. The first one is presentation on capital improvement projects. Kristen?
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. All right, we'll jump right into these. For our admin building remodel, we had our mandatory pre-bid meeting on Friday the 31st. It was held in our training room, and it was standing room only, which is a good sign of a lot of interest from contractors. The questions were due on February the 5th. We had a total of 12 questions, fairly straightforward, simple, easy to answer. The bids will be due on February the 19th, and so our plan is to start construction the spring of 2025. So we're rolling along. Okay, the FAM landing update. So again, here's the original rendering, just to remind everybody what the plans were for what it would look like. So this was the last drone photo that I showed you all. You can see in the front here, the sheet piling that they had. There was a lot of dirt moving. The dewatering systems were in place. And then Lloyd, our videographer and photographer, we usually do a field trip once a month and go do drone photos together. So this was our photo session from January. You can see all of the sheet piling has been removed, so the water is now flowing up to the landing itself. The backfill has all been done, which is basically like gravel that they've packed in so they can pour concrete on top of that. And then this coming week, they're gonna have OESCO and Cantera working out there, doing the concrete and then working on some lighting. So at this point, while we're waiting for the rest of the concrete work to be done, it's just a lot of like grading, so it's leveling out the dirt so that sod can be put on top of it. So there's a lot of big equipment out there. So then this photo, you can see over off to the left-hand side, we have the bases for the pedestrian bridge that are going across. When we had our meeting out there on yesterday, Thursday, they have placed the first couple of beams, so the bridge is coming right along, looks good. It's very exciting. And then you can see this again is just kind of like the overall perspective of, you can see O'Connor, you can see FAM Landing, and then you can see the FAM Museum in the back, just to give an idea of that. O'Connor is looking really great and it's very soon to open, so that's exciting. Okay, maps for bus stops. So again, our contract went to Atlas and there were a total of 140 proposed bus stops. As of yesterday, 76 have been completed, like the concrete pads themselves, which overall in the project is about 75%. And then we have Tyler, who's installing the shelters. We have 45 shelters, and that includes trash receptacles and bike racks. So 45 of those concrete pads are done. So you can see how far we've come. I'll just give you some examples of some of the stops that they've been working on. This is Northwest 10th and St. Charles Avenue. And again, the goal is to not only put in a pad, but if there's a way to connect it to existing sidewalk or make sure that there's additional sidewalk added to an intersection with an ADA ramp. So all of that work is included. Here's Northwest 10th and Greenville Road. It's over by some apartment complexes. Here's Northwest 43rd and North May Avenue. And then for the BRT update, really the only piece that we have left is our connection to Penn Square Mall. And I just kind of put together a quick little rendering of what that would look like. This is an old Google map, obviously. They've obviously finished all the sodding, but the blue component is the piece that would connect to the sidewalk that we put in on Northwest Expressway, connecting it to the Penn Square parking lot below. And that is all I have for you all. Do you have any questions for me?
Do our good friends at the mall have any interest or plans, or are there any communications about, so that sidewalk, of course, goes into the mall parking lot, and then I guess people are just safe walking through the parking lot to, was that Dillard's? I don't go to the mall.
Are you asking about maybe like continental striping or something?
Something,
or?
I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know. I know, for instance, when we had a development on May Avenue recently around 50th, they, have a sidewalk there along May, and then there's a brief moment of elevation to get people safely, from the sidewalk to the, what is it, Five Guys or Starbucks, Five Guys and Starbucks.
Yes.
I'm not asking for that, but yeah, just something, I don't know. I mean, it just, because that's a street, a little mini street within the mall that people are crossing to get to.
Right.
Where I guess most of us, when we do park at the mall, you're in the parking spaces, you walk from where you parked your car to the thing. But in this instance, we're actually asking people to cross like 2 traffic lanes to get where normal or the parking is. Do you follow what I'm saying there?
Yes.
So just, I don't have a solution. That's why I'm asking, has anyone had any of these sort of conversations?
So I'm trying to get a meeting set up with them, and it's not just people located here, it's people in like Indianapolis.
Yeah.
So whenever we do get that meeting set up, then I will for sure make sure that that's on the agenda.
Thank you so much.
You're very
Appreciate you. And good work generally, so.
Anybody else?
Any other questions or comments? Good job, thank you.
And this is my last update for you all, so I've appreciated working with you, and I will just be with the city still, so we will all be in touch.
Moving on to demolition.
Yes.
Thank you, Kristen. Okay. Item B is our presentation of our transit system report. Jesse?
Good morning. Mic's on. All right, good. Yeah, I'll be providing an update across all of our transit modes real quick. That's the end. Oh. All right, let's try again here. I'm gonna need a little help, Greg. There we go. All right. Appreciate that. Appreciate the team working with me there. All right. So let's talk BRT. So our cumulative monthly total for December of 2024 was almost a little over 41,000, and our average daily ridership for Rapid Northwest was just a little over 1,300. Again, exceeding expectations for our average daily ridership when we initially built the Rapid Northwest. Cumulative monthly total across the system there, again, 41,000. This is an increase of December of 2023 when we launched the system of 31,721. This is a 25% increase over our launch month. Yeah. So let me just pause there and let you guys take that in, right? So that's pretty awesome. If you follow the blue, that's when we launched in December, and we continued, throughout the year.
And it was a free fare.
It was, that's right, yeah. And we continue to
year
grow.
ago.
And we're averaging about 35,000 a month now. So
But that's why that's a big deal, right? Is it wasn't free. It's not free right now.
That's right.
And it was free, and it's 10,000 people more. I mean, I guess there's probably multiple factors to which we would attribute that, but are we already kind of honing in on a few that you would say this is what's happened, this is why the ridership is what it is?
sure. So I mean, anytime you launch a new service, it's going to take a moment for folks to realize the benefit and kind of really understand how it works with especially with something like a Rapid and how it interconnects with our fixed route system. And so as we've seen that, then we've noticed that folks will be like, oh, well, I can take Route 3, and instead of taking Route 3 all the way this way, I can hop on the BRT and shortcut the system and get to the transit center a little faster, right? And so folks are finding ways to use it.
12 to 15-minute headways also
That makes a huge difference.
makes
yeah.
a huge difference in ridership.
Yeah, in all of our surveys, the main thing that folks want to see is increased frequency, and that's what they're getting with the Rapid Northwest. Yep. All right, let's take a look at our fixed route system. So for December, we carried 221,000 customers. This is a slight decrease over last year of 231,000, but still a slight increase of from December of 2022, about a 5% increase. So again, I want to pause here for just a second. So if you think about, yes, it's a slight decrease over December of last year for our fixed route system, but then when you take in the Rapid Northwest ridership and combine it and think about it as an entire system, we're actually, continuing to see growth across our entire system whenever you combine the two. And then moving on, so our average weekday ridership for our fixed route system was a little over 8,000 for December of 24. That's, again, a slight decrease over 2023, but an increase over 2022. And then our weeknight ridership for December was 334. Again, slight decrease over last year, but an increase over 2022. And then our weekend ridership for our fixed route system, December was a little over 3,500, slight decrease over December of last year, but an increase over 2022. All right, and then our plus ridership for December, we saw 3,579 folks use that system, a decrease over last year, but just a tiny increase over 2022. Moving on to streetcar. So for December, we saw 26,664 folks use our streetcar system. This is an increase over the previous year and an increase over 2022. So this is a couple of things to point out here. So again, we contribute our ridership for the streetcar system based on essentially folks being outside, using the sidewalk, going to events and things like that. And we've continued to see events increase in 2024, and we contribute that to being part of the increase for streetcar. But I also would like to point out that in December, we had our Downtown December, where we were offering complimentary rides on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays in the month of December, and also a little bit into January, so we contribute that, also leading to the ridership increase there for December. And then our average weekday ridership is about 618 for December, increases over the previous 2 years. And then our weekend ridership, again, 1,400, again, contributing the big jump in December over the last 3 years, also a big jump in December, contributing that to our Downtown December events where we offer those complimentary rides. All right, that is it. Short and sweet.
Yeah.
Happy to take any questions.
Do you want to mention the federal grant, the $19 million federal grant for
Yeah.
transits, bus shelters and
Yeah.
sidewalks and other things?
Yeah.
It's actually a grant to the city, but we're going to benefit.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that. So we partner with the MAPS office and went out to, after a grant to help fund some of the MAPS 4 bus shelters. So if you think about it, previous to MAPS 4, we had a little over 200 bus stops across our entire network of over 1,400 bus stops that had shelters. With MAPS 4 in phase 1, Kristen alluded to it, we were looking to provide about 140 bus stop shelters, so increasing our total to over 300. With the MAPS 4, with the grant that we received, it's a $19 million grant. And that's going to help us get over an additional close to 500 bus stop shelters, or shelters at our bus stops, getting us close to over half of our bus stops having shelters. Pretty awesome, exciting stuff. And then to your point, and to Kristen's point, that includes the bus stop pad, the shelters, and those connections, those ADA connections.
That's
Pedestrian
great.
connections.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about the transit report? If not, we'll move on to receiving our reports. Is there a motion to receive? It's been moved and seconded. Please vote electronically. Motion passes. Okay, moving on to items from trustees. James?
Just say to Kristen, I think I was a trustee when you were doing the outreach to streetcar stakeholders along the route, and I've just seen you just grow as a human and as a staff member here, and it's just been really cool to see you in this capacity. I'm sad we won't get to see you here at Embark, but I am happy you're still with us in the city of OKC, so I just wanted to take time to acknowledge your contributions, quite frankly, a legacy. So, hold on to that whenever those dark days show up, so that's all I have.
Robert? Steve? Brent?
I'd just like to say, with the passing of Chris Kaufman, I got to work for him about 25 years. First with doing TIF projects. He was on TIF review committees, and what I loved about Chris was he wouldn't just come in and stamp it and say, yeah, that's what staff did. He would ask us questions, and he would prod, and he would even say, that one's not going to work, Brent. I remember him telling me that one. And so I'll tell you offline which one it is if you want to talk. But I appreciate that about him. And then I know when we went to build the new parking garage for the convention center, it was a little before my time, but before I got in this role, but he was the one that told our finance people, why don't we take that money that we got from just selling that parking garage and putting it down on the new one? And And they were like, yeah, we could do that. And what, and the end result is we're in way better financial shape in the parking system because of that. And that's leadership. And I just really appreciated him for the way he led and how he pushed us as staff. I think that's always good to prod and ask us questions and to help us do better. And so I can name others that do that to us as well. So one of them sitting over here too, that prods us to do stuff. So, but I just really appreciated working for him, and I'm sorry to see him go.
Yeah, but at the beginning of the meeting, we talked about it, but he passed Tuesday night.
Just ditto what Brent said. I now feel a bit more strongly than I did previously about the parking garage and acknowledging in some capacity the fact that mural-wise he was someone who, y'all know how I feel about parking garages, and that man said, y'all know, and that man said, well, let's, put a little dash of magic on there, and that's great, and I just think if we can, some sort of acknowledgement of that parking garage and mural legacy that he's done. So.
Chris was chairman of our parking committee for a number of years, as I recall. When I first came on to the trust, we couldn't pay our bills, couldn't pay our debt, and we borrowed money from the water trust, I believe, and slowly paid it back, and now we're in a much better financial position. But Chris understood it and was out to make sure that we righted that ship and we're on a good financial footing. So he will be missed. So,
Yeah,
Jesse?
just a couple of things. So a reminder, tonight is the ULI event where we'll be nominated for Public Impact Project. So that's tonight. Appreciate those that will be joining us. Also wanted to tell Kristen thank you also. So she has clearly played a major part in nearly every major public transit project that we've brought to Oklahoma City in the past 10 years. But she won't be going far. So she's going to be helping us with or not helping us, but helping the city with the new Prairie Surf demolition and the construction of the arena. So again, continuing her legacy of being involved in major projects in Oklahoma City. And then finally, one last thing, we talked about the passing of Kaufman, so we will be bringing an item to recognize him for his service in the coming months. But I did want to point out or share a quick story. I appreciate Eugene and Molly for sharing or reminding me about this. So I think folks know that we have all of our streetcars. They've all got like little pet nicknames. So it was actually Chris that actually named our final streetcar, and he named it Pink Panther. So it will, for here on into eternity, be remembered as Pink Panther for sure. So appreciate that.
Very good. Well, thank you all for coming today, and if there's not anything else, we are adjourned. Thank you.